Sure, I think it'd be easy to watch and think. I'm glad we're not in this situation. Assuming it's about a worse situation than the one we're in. Hinata shrugged. He hadn't put that much thought into it, really. But it was fun to watch zombies and stuff. Maybe it was about zombies. He pulled out his student handbook and opened the terrible looking app. The moment his finger touched the screen, the lights blacked out without fade or preamble, and a deafening cackle ripped out of the speaker's ear. He felt Komida jump in his seat, heard the ice in his soda. It was probably just a glitch. Some short in the crappy sound system, but it set the tone. There were no trailers, no credits, just a slow fade on the dark alley. The blackness on the screen was brighter than the blackness of the theater, illuminating enough that Hinata could glance to his right and see Komida's hand clenching the armrest, braced for another startling sound. The camera panned over wet concrete, the sound of police sirens fading in and out in the background. Mixed with raindrops, the puddles on the cement started to look grim as the camera panned closer to the focus of the shot. A gruesome mangled crime scene eventually came into view. The only discernible remains were stained articles of clothing, a frilly pink and white pleated skirt, and a bloody ribbon. A blow-shaped hair clip sat off to the table, almost completely submerged in gore. The camera finally stopped panning on a broken wand, and the title appeared with a shriek of alignment. My little sister can't possibly be this murder of... He heard Komida make a sound first. Well then. Is that Usami's wand? What? Isn't that a stupid Monokuma movie? Wait, okay, I just caught on to that. What the heck? I was so confused. Hinata bolted up out of his seat. Why didn't we see this coming? Komida didn't stand up. In fact, he seemed to have sunk further into his seat. I thought it was a possibility, but didn't imagine he'll go to the effort of actually making another film himself. Oh my gosh. I have no excuse for not catching on to the fact that that's supposed to be Usami. He sighed. I suppose you want to leave now, right? Don't you? You hate Monokuma films more than anybody. Aren't you even a little curious about the surprise? No. When has a surprise for Monokuma ever been something good? The introduction over, the movie continued in the background, but neither of them was paying attention to it. Maybe it's not good, but if someone else gets surprised and it ends up being important, wouldn't you want to know about it? You said yourself that the movie theater wouldn't be used again. Komida took a thoughtful sip. Not for murder, he offered finally. Okay, maybe he's just curious. Hinata was a little curious too, if he was being honest with himself, which he seldom had been recently, though he wasn't quite ready to give up yet. If this isn't about a motive or a way to get out of here, there's no way the prize is worth sticking around for. Hinata almost cringed when he said it, feeling like he'll open up some narrative doorway for Monokuma to pop up over the seat back and explain why he was wrong. He held his breath, but no bear appeared. Komida looked like he was waiting to, and subtly, oh my gosh. Relax at the lack of interruption. Hinata-kun, we're on a date. Komida reminded him softly, sounding almost guilty at having to bring up the joke again. I know that. Hinata sputtered, rolling his eyes near Ratchet. I cannot read today. I mean, I really can't read on normal days, but this is just awful. Theatrically, Adjuster lost to the darkness. He settled back in his chair to see if he could catch up with this stupid film now that they were apparently staying for the duration. Ugh, it was even worse than he expected. The other characters appeared to be these shoddily made puppets or stuffed animals or something. They were going on in what sounded like Monami's voice about various murders. Their felt heads jiggling every time they spoke like they were being lightly shaken by some unseen hand. Great, so much for an escape. Stuffed animals and murder was basically their everyday lives now. Hinata grabbed the popcorn bag with a loud, irritable rustle and nestled in his lap, balanced on the seat between his thighs for easier access. He picked up a single kernel and quietly decimated it between two fingers before flicking the airy shards to the floor. It wasn't that he wanted to waste popcorn, but there was something satisfying about the micro-destruction that managed to distract him for a few whole seconds. No, he should pay attention. It looked like Komaeda was paying attention, and he would hate it if there was like a quiz or something later, which wouldn't surprise him at all at this point. A scream tore through the theater as her stuffed animal, a lizard or a dragon or something, was grabbed and dragged down a dark alley by the gloved hands of an assailant cloaked in filth. Somehow, it was leaving a bright, bloody trail as it struggled. Or more likely, it was being shaken by someone off camera and was consumed by the darkness. Komaeda shuddered beside him, and Hinata couldn't entirely blame him. The visual effects were quite frankly the dumbest thing he'd ever seen in his life, but the sound effects were actually quite vivid and horrendous. The loud, wet crunch, followed by a pathetic whimper, ended the scene. And suddenly, Komaeda's head was on his shoulder. A date. Hinata played it cool, obviously. You scared? Komaeda's response sounded casual. It had to be about serial killer, it figures. Hinata hadn't been paying enough attention to the movie to ascribe that genre to the killings, but he paid enough attention to Komaeda to know that he didn't like serial killers specifically. Well, not that anyone likes serial killers, except maybe Sonya. Hinata was still playing this super cool and only kind of elbowed Komaeda in the face while trying to put an arm around his shoulders. Komaeda gasped as if he hadn't been angling for this turn of events since the beginning. Hinata-kun, is it possible you're going to protect me? He paused, seeming to have forgotten something. Someone as worthless and unendearing as me? His voice wavered on the last line, almost nervous. It's a date, Hinata reminded him, in that tone of voice one reserves for being on a joke date with a boy who you're definitely not dating, but could draw his underwear from memory if you had to. That was an old thought, but Hinata's brain was firing off some new signals and maybe some wires were getting crossed. He touched Komaeda lots of times, but an arm around him in a movie theater was making his heartbeat quicken. You're right. When Komaeda's head suddenly tucked a little closer against Hinata's neck, Hinata almost jumped, but only because it timed up with a gruesome stabbing of a plush pig on screen who was duct taped to a chair and a return of its soundtrack violins. I don't mind if you want to try and protect me. The next sound from the movie was a whack from a metal bat that rung out horrifically through the theater, a sharp ping that had no place in the movie about plush puppets, and Komaeda actually cried out. Hinata flinched more from Komaeda's outburst in the movie. Komaeda's shocked laugh was tinged with actual horror. Then, without warning, The two of them were plunged into absolute darkness. The speakers cracked and the screen blacked out first, following by the lighting along the walkway and the dim lights by the door. Behind them, the distinct sound of something powering down, burning to a halt, leaving only a steady roaring silence. Not, not this again. Hinata found himself tightening a protective grip on Komaeda's shoulder, despite Komaeda having been directly responsible for the previous blackout Hinata was subjected to. I thought we weren't going to be reusing any plot devices. He shouted to the void and winced at how his voice sounded, too loud but also too small, swallowed by the vast ceiling. Komaeda wheezed, tense and semi-delirious beside him. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Hinata half shoved him back against his chair. You did this? You seriously did this again? Sorry, Hinata. What? How? What the heck? His voice was low and his words clipped like he was chiding himself. Usually when this happens, there are many more people around, but since it's you, it feels worse than letting down a full house. Usually? It felt strange, emoting in the dark, knowing no one, even the astonished face he was making. Wait, whatever. It doesn't always happen, Commander insisted quickly. But of course the manager always gives everyone in theater free tickets when the power goes out. Okay, what? And? So the next time they visit, they can enjoy their film without me. Hinata felt his whole body slump. He wondered if Komeda often went to the movies by himself. Perhaps early in the morning, when no one else would be there. He sighed. We should probably get out of here and make sure power didn't die all over the island, or worse, all over every island. It's most likely just here, Hinata-kun. But seeing as I've already ruined the date, we may as well go check on everyone to ease your concerns. Hinata stood up, gripping the armrest for support, and grounded as though he'd completely forgotten the general layout of a movie theater and was prepared for any number of new obstacles to have appeared around him. Having also forgotten the popcorn between his legs, the bag tumbled on the floor, and the kernels could be heard scattering around his feet. He managed to crunch some beneath his heel without even taking a proper step. He started edging along the row seats, but bumped into Kome's legs. You coming too? The soft squeak from the seat signaled that Komeda had finally stood up, and more popcorn crunchers followed them into the aisle. Oh, the power must be on in the lobby. Hinata pointed, however unseen and useless, at the hair-thin beam of yellow glinting on the floor beneath the double doors. He almost tripped taking a step forward toward it, forgetting that the aisle sloped upward toward the exit, so thank God no one saw him. He probably didn't make an embarrassing grunt or anything. Why am I running out of breath? Komaya made it silently to the doors and began rattling at the handle. He hummed, sounded a little grim, and out his heart sank. What seems to be the problem? As if he couldn't guess. Well, Komaya cleared his throat softly. It seems to be locked. Oh, Hinata said flatly. Of course it is. A small metallic sound clicked in his ears and Komeda spoke up again. I have my multi-tool, as you may remember, but it is very dark and sadly even in ideal conditions, lockpicking is just one of many talents I do not possess. It sounded like he was still fumbling with it anyway. Hinata just groaned, leaning on the door. Let him try for a bit. A few minutes passed and Hinata started to feel bad about how earnestly Komeda was accomplishing absolutely nothing. His eyes were adjusting to the darkness, pupils dilating to absorb every bit of light being cast from under the door until he could make out Komeda's slim figure hunched over the doorknob. Hey. He reached out to stop him. Komeda let out a yelp, multi-tool clattering to the floor. Sorry, you don't have to keep messing with it. If I had to guess, we're probably locked in here until the movie was supposed to end, so he can make sure he watched the whole thing no matter how bad it sucked. Hinata wasn't sure he believed in himself. That is, that it was really that simple, but maybe. Oh. Kamaya stooped down to scoop up his tool and returned it to his pocket. Well, you're probably right. He sounded relatively unconcerned. Then horrified. So we simply have to wait here in dark silence after I ruined a date, having made us come here and insisting we stay in the first place, placing us in a situation from which I have now failed to help us escape. His voice trembled. You did, Hinata waited carefully through the self-loading. You did should suggest this, but it's like a normal place to hang out, so I mean, it made sense to come here. I could have stopped you if I wanted. I lured you here, Komeda groaned, for all disgusting motives. Hinata rubbed the back of his neck, the sound of his collar wrestling against his fingers deafening. Like he wasn't perfectly aware of Komeda's motives. Like he didn't usually have similar motives. He wondered if it was even fair to play dumb at this point because, as always, Komeda would let him get away with it if he wanted to. He could hear Komeda's breathing getting faster. Hinata-kun, I've really ruined the entire day and wasted your valuable free time. Komeda was moving away as he spoke. Hinata could hear genuine panic starting to rise in his voice as he backed down the aisle, them figures sinking farther into the blackness. If he tripped over something, he was gonna hurt himself. Hey, Komeda, isn't this actually good luck? I mean, that movie was horrible, and I'm the one who suggested it. So didn't the power outage actually save us? Komeda froze in place, drifting against the wall, eyes glinting. But even a terrible movie would have saved you from having to talk with me for prolonged periods of time. Hinata could see him feeling his way back, submerging himself in the deepest shadows, and realized that, contrary to his idle and mostly facetious thoughts on the matter, Komeda didn't actually glow in the dark. We spent lots of time just talking, haven't we? It's true that it wasn't always pleasant, and conversations with Komeda frequently ranged from frustrating to horrifying. There was honestly never a dull moment. I don't mind talking with you. You always have something interesting to say. He offered kindly. Komeda slid a frustrated hand in his hair. That's because we aren't always enjoying a nice, normal date. You know, I'm sure a lot of dates don't go the way people plan for them to go. I bet it's pretty normal to have a weird date that results in some story to tell later, right? Hinata was just guessing. Komeda seemed to chew on the concept of a weird date being normal for a moment before deciding he wasn't buying it. This isn't even a particularly engaging story, Hinata-kun. Komeda's stress was contagious, and this thing he was hung up on was not even close to the worst thing that had happened to them in the last 24 hours. Try to calm down, ain't no getting out of here. The potential for this movie date to actually get bad was currently circling their heads like a vulture, and Hinata wasn't in the mood. He advanced on Komeda before he could wrap up his anxiety any further, smacking his palm against the wall beside his head. It would have looked cooler if Hinata was just a little taller, he told himself, but this was fine. Oh, okay. You know what is really normal for two people on You know what's really normal for two people on a date at a movie theater? Not actually watching the movie. Hinata was hit with a surge of inspiration and took a small step to the side up on the incline. Now, just a few critical inches taller than Komaeda, Hinata leaned down to kiss him silent. His newfound altitude must have been affecting the oxygen in the air because he felt himself swoon at how strong he felt doing it. Komaeda made a muffled sound, the back of his head pressed against the wall. It was so quiet in here. Hinata could hear Komaeda's throat contract as he swallowed another nervous groan. He took a heart-poundingly tense moment of unquiet contact for Komaeda to really kiss back. Hinata felt a painful tension that he didn't realize he'd been building abruptly leave his shoulders, easing his stiff posture into something that could have been mistaken for confidence. Komaeda tipped his head back, wide-eyed, innocent expression coming into focus, dragging his teeth along Hinata's lower lip as he pulled away. Are you attempting to save this failure of a date, Hinata-kun? Hinata took extra note of how his pale lashes caught the light at the lofty angle. Maybe he could just stand on a slight ramp at all times, or at least anytime he felt like making out with the boy who was all lanky legs, jutting hip bones that dug into Hinata's side. Don't act like this wasn't your plan from the beginning. It was kind of an accusation, but given the mood, it came out gentle and almost fond. Hinata had spent enough time with Komaeda to know that neither of them should be surprised by this turn of events. Komaeda turned his head just enough that the next kiss Hinata tried to go in for missed its mark, planting instead chastely on his cheek. Hinata-kun, today I'd hoped to first earn your interest with this quaint dating scenario, but at measure I have failed. Hinata paused, unsure where this was going. Since when do you bother to, no. Since when do you have to earn my interest? Usually I have them quickly, late at night. What is that word? I don't know what that word is. Fingers tugging at his waistband, the white gauze from his canopy bed fluttering against his bare back. His interest peaked. I simply wanted to see if I could fill this kind of role too. He laughed softly against Hinata's mouth, melding into a quick kiss as if to show he hadn't forgotten. There are different aspects to enjoying someone's company, and I should probably accept that I'm capable of feeling only one enjoyable and completely incompetent at all others. Oh no. I don't not enjoy your company. Hinata briefly felt like he had left his body and could see himself a third person. Really messing this up. Oh, but please don't think I'm ungrateful. Being enjoyable to you in any aspect is more than I could hope for. I just thought for your sake it would be nice to be able to rely on me for other purposes, such as being a pleasant movie date. Komaeda, the movie being crappy at a Blackout were not your fault. This time, he added silently. And you're being too hard on yourself. Not like that's anything new. Having a good date takes two people, so I guess I'm not all that good at it either. Again, he was just guessing. It sounded right though. Komaeda gasped softly against him. Hinata-kun, no, you've been a perfectly normal date. Probably. The realization that neither of them had any idea what constitutes a normal date drifted down from the high drapery, settling slowly and simultaneously on their shoulders. Hinata heard himself laugh first. And oh my goodness. Kameda's embarrassment melted after a few moments and he laughed too. Well, at least you feel confident in one area. I don't even really have that going for me. Kameda made it seem so easy, but Hinata suspected that literally any other person would be less forgiving of his inexperienced fumbling. He still really couldn't figure out why Kameda was so forgiving, more so in this area than others, and quite frankly tried to avoid thinking about it too deeply. Hinata-kun, you are the most enjoyable to be around in all aspects, even areas someone might see as miserable faults. Play on you as relatable and charming. Kamehida was instantly breathless and horrified, and it made Hinata laugh harder to see him so distraught. He leaned in to rescue himself and Kamehida from the incoming stream of backhanded compliments, kissing his frantic rambling until it muffled into a low hum. Kamehida leaned into him, bending his knee enough that Hinata could feel it through his jeans. He seemed to sink further down the sloping floor, craning his slender neck up and feeling so small against the wall. The darkness was so thick against Hinata's eyelids that when he blinked, the air taking on a strange density. He couldn't really see where his hands were, couldn't see what they were doing. Did that make it easier? A figure, fragile and angular, letting Hinata do whatever he wanted. Hinata let his fingers sink into the fabric, nearly slamming him back against the wall, the soft thud of his back prominent in the silence. Kameda started to form a thought he could hear it, but Hinata dove back down, sucking the breath out of his lungs. The kisses started to drift to his jawline and throat, giving him time to tip his head away. Hinata rolled his hips once, cutting the thought short. He liked having him up against the wall, less forgiving than a bed. When he pushed, there was nothing to absorb the force but the boy under him. Hinata started slowly guiding him to the floor. Okay, dang, you can't even move to the chairs? Y'all just gonna move to the floor. He grabbed at Komeda's belt buckle while Komeda lifted his hips, even as the complaint started up again. Not that this is the area where people typically drop food, but it still sees a significant amount of food traffic. He paused, eyes going wide enough to catch the light. Unless you just enjoy seeing me on the filthy ground, Hinata. Are you fishing for compliments? Hinata's fingers dragged roughly over Kameda's fly, pausing to squeeze at him through his jeans as Kameda's back hit the ground, arching into Hinata's palm. Hinata leaned down to drag teeth across his throat. Clang, what? Hinata flinched like he'd been stuck and felt Komeda go still against the arms rigidly locked around his neck. What is going on? It was hideously loud, and coming from the locked door, a dark shape now split the bar of the light in half. Was that a knock? Who was even capable of knocking like that except maybe Need-Eye? But Need-Eye was... Who is it? Hinata called, realizing he hadn't moved the muscle since the claving began. Still kind of hard. And pressed against Kamehida, who had gone silent beneath them, breathing against his neck. Hinata gently pushed away from him and helped him to his feet, heart pounding, taking the defensive stance. What the heck is going on? But I don't know what the F. Oh, shit. Don't go near it. For some reason, I feel like we shouldn't open it. Hinata felt stupid saying it. It couldn't be Monokuma, the only real danger they all faced, as he could definitely pop up anywhere. Now, I don't even think you could open the door anyway, so like, whatever. He could definitely pop up whenever and wherever he wanted, regardless of locked doors or learning to read the damn blue. It had to just be someone on the island, or the wind. You think that was the wind? Komeda nodded. It does sound unnecessarily forceful. Hinata realized Komeda was trembling a little. Interesting reaction from someone constantly begged to be murdered as a stepping stone for hope. Maybe whatever was behind the door was not here on behalf of hope. You okay? Sorry, it was just a startling loud sound. He laughed it off, but abruptly spun around. Hinata-kun, did you hear that? Yes, obviously I heard it. No, over there, close to the stage, I heard something skittering. Oh my gosh. Oh no. Wait. So is this like part of like the horror movie thing? Like it was just part of it for the movie to turn off and then the horror stuff to start happening because Monokuma knew they was gonna start trying to get it on and he wasn't scared of what it was doing. That wasn't a pleasant word. Nothing good traverses by Skittering. Hinata stepped between Komeda and the sound without thinking, as if he was planning to fight something that skitters. Ew. Could it be some kind of island animal that snuck in here? He asked, raising his fist. What you gonna do? You go swing on it? It sounded like there was more than one. Oh no. Komeda moved beside him and wrapped his arms around Hinata's bicep, leaning into a mumble against his shoulder. It's not like I'm afraid of rats or insects particularly, but it really is an unpleasant sound in the dark. Hinata almost shivered at the unfamiliar surge of energy welling up in his gut. This time he heard the skittering, impossible to miss, a hissing, rapid fluttering. Sound rose up all throughout the theater, seeming to come from everywhere at once, but low to the ground and loud. Hinata sucked in a sharp breath through his teeth and grabbed Komeda's shoulders, pulling him up the incline toward the door again. Hinata ran up and planted his heels solidly on the middle of the door, producing a much less impressive clang of his own. What the hell do you want, asshole? No response came from the door. Instead, he heard a soft yelp behind him and felt Komeda's hand pulled out of his grasp. He whipped around, eyes frantically darted around the blackness, catching only faint hints of shapes as his other senses strained to compensate where his sight was failing. Komeda? The gruesome red of some emergency light suddenly lit up somewhere near the stage, silhouetting the scene. What is going on? Is this just a whole little horror thing going on here? Like, they not even gonna have a chance to do nothing? I mean, as we know why we're all here. I'm just like, it was interesting though. It's funny. Oh, what? I don't even know if I finished reading that last part. Oh, excuse me? Arms wrapped around Komeda from behind as he was dragged back down the incline. A hand clamped over his mouth, and the glint of metal pressed against his ribs. What in the world? The darkness obscured any identifying features, but how come anyone have gotten here anyway?